He thought he'd die in a foreign plaza. Now an alien empress and her daughter refused to let him walk away. He took the blaster fire for an alien princess, then woke claimed by her empire. I took 6 shots before my knees even understood they were supposed to buckle. The plaza on Kalian Prime had been annoyingly peaceful 5 seconds before. I was leaning on a vendor's stall, arguing about whether recycled beans could legally be called coffee, watching lavender sunlight spill between crystal towers. Then somebody screamed, the crowd rippled, broke. Figures in matte black armor surged from the colonnade, rifles up, formation tight. They weren't here for the crowd. Every barrel tracked one point: a woman in a mantle of living light, and a small copper-skinned child clutching the edge of her robe. My brain could have asked questions, wrong place, wrong species, not my problem. Instead, my body did the thing it always did before my thoughts caught up. I dropped the cup, drew my sidearm, and ran. The first bolt flashed past my cheek and turned an ornamental pillar into molten glass. The second chewed through the stall behind me. The third hit my chest plate like a rail hammer and spun me sideways. Didn't matter. The woman shoved the girl behind her, spreading her arms as if silk and bone could stop plasma. The assassin spread out in a practiced arc. "Down!" I roared. The word ripped from old training. The universal translator embedded in my collar spat something in Kalier clicks and tones. I hit the ground in a slide, boots squealing on polished stone, and slammed into the woman's legs. My shoulder screamed. I tangled with her, rolled, and ended up between the girl and the guns. The child stared up at me, eyes huge and luminous gold, pupils ringed with shifting constellations. She looked about 8. She looked very, very certain she was about to die. "Not today," I growled. I fired 3 times. One assassin dropped, armor blooming with molten holes. The others adjusted. These weren't street thugs. This was a kill team. Their answering volley hit like a wall. Bolt in the shoulder, another in the hip. One skimmed my helmet and turned half my vision white with static. I heard people shrieking, crystal shattering, the high keening whine of a grav car flipping. The girl whimpered behind me, small hands fisting in the back of my jacket. "Stay up, Cade. Just stay up." I charged the closest gunman, screaming something wordless. We collided. My pistol barked point blank into his visor. We hit the ground together. My ribs cracked. I rolled off him, seeing double, and realized there were still 3. They'd stopped shooting. They were aiming carefully now, all 3 barrels centered on the tiny form behind me. "No," I snarled, shoving myself upright, putting every centimeter of my body between them and her. The next bolt hit just below my heart. For a second it was cold. Then it was all fire. Another followed, then another. I lost count. My legs weren't legs anymore, just distant rumors. I toppled backwards, somehow still managing to wrap my arms around the girl as we fell. Her breath hitched against my neck. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "It's okay," I whispered, which was a hell of a lie. "You're okay, stay still." The world shrank to the smell of scorched fabric and copper, the dull roar in my ears. Somewhere beyond that noise, new sound cut in. Metal boots striking stone in unison. High-frequency hum of energy pikes coming online. Voices barking orders in a language I didn't know but recognized. Professionals. The cavalry. Darkness surged up from the edges of my vision and swallowed everything. I woke to the sound of my own heart trying to punch its way out of my chest. A soft field held me down. Med-gel restraint, gentle but absolute. The air smelled like antiseptic and something faintly metallic sweet. Ceiling above, a smooth curve of pale gold threaded with veins of slow-moving light. Not dead, then. "Stay still," a voice said. It wasn't human. The consonants had too much resonance, like they were vibrating in my bones. I turned my head anyway, slowly. Stubbornness will get you killed. It'll also make you move when you shouldn't. An angular face hovered into view, skin like deep obsidian glass laced with glowing blue tracery, eyes a soft, luminous silver. Kaliar, then, the species that owned this city. He wore white, long coat marked with a caduceus-like symbol. Doctor, my brain helpfully supplied. How many? My voice sounded like gravel left out in the rain. How many hits? The Kaliar physician's frills fluttered in what I was pretty sure was disbelief. 6 direct center mass, 2 peripheral, human. You should be corpse matter in reclamation. Instead, you are obnoxiously alive. Good hardware, I croaked, trying for a shrug and getting a sharp pulse of pain instead. Old habit. Old insanity, he muttered. You will not move. He gestured, and the bed adjusted, cradling my back. We rebuilt what we could. The rest, your species biology insists on doing things the slow way. Kid? I rasped. The child, is she? A small hand slid into my peripheral vision and grabbed my fingers like they were the only solid thing in the galaxy. I'm here, a small voice whispered. I turned my head. It hurt in ways the painkillers couldn't quite smother, but I did it anyway. She stood beside the bed, both hands wrapped around my larger one now, as if she didn't quite trust that I wouldn't fall out of existence if she let go. Copper bronze skin with tiny, shifting constellations flickering just beneath the surface. Hair like spun white gold, falling in soft waves around a pair of delicate head frills. Those golden eyes were huge and wet. You stayed, she said. They shot you and you stayed. You put your body over mine. The translator rendered the music of her voice into standard, but couldn't hide the tremble. Yeah, I said quietly, seemed like a good idea at the time. Her fingers tightened around mine hard enough to hurt. You saved me. The door irised open with a soft sigh. 3 warriors entered first. Tall Kaliar in mirrored armor. Helms tucked under their arms, energy spears collapsed at their belts. Their movements were too precise to be anything but elite, the kind of people they send when failure isn't an option. Behind them walked someone who made the air feel different just by existing. She was tall even for her species, every line of her body carrying that unnerving mix of grace and authority. Her skin was a softer bronze than the child's, threaded with brighter star traces that pulsed in time with her slow steps. Her hair cascaded in a braided mane, woven with thin strands of metal that caught the light. A circlet rested on her brow, a band of living crystal that shifted colors as she moved. The room seemed to lean toward her. The child let go of my hand just long enough to run to her, burying her face in the folds of the woman's deep indigo mantle. Mother, she whispered, voice muffled. Ah, not just important then. The woman's hand descended to the girl's head, fingers splaying with a tenderness that didn't fit the rest of her warlike bearing. She soothed her with a few low, melodic syllables, then lifted her gaze to me. Her eyes were not gold like her daughter's. They were a deep, steady blue, ringed with silver, eyes that had seen far too much and refused to look away. So, she said, and the translator murmured in my ear, smoothing her alien cadence into something I could understand. You are the human. I tried to straighten. The bed hissed disapproval and pushed me back down. Depends, I managed. How many are there? The faintest hint of amusement curved her mouth. In this system, 1. Her attention flicked to the doctor. Status? Alive, the physician said, equal parts awe and annoyance, against all reasonable projections. Her eyes returned to me. Rafe Cade, she said. Hearing my name in her voice did something strange to my chest. Former Sergeant Terran Defense Forces, honorably discharged 2 years ago, freelance hauler since. My heart skipped. I hadn't given anyone my name. You've been busy. When someone throws themselves into a storm of plasma for my child, she replied, I make a point of learning who they are. The girl peeked around her mother's mantle, eyes bright. He wouldn't move, Mother. They shot, and he just wouldn't move. The woman rested her hand on the girl's shoulder. I saw the recordings. Her gaze didn't waver from mine. Rafe Cade of Earth, you intercepted an assassination attempt on Princess Mirren Kale. You bled for her, her head inclined, slow and deliberate. I am Serenia Kale, Imperatrix of Kalian. Ah, I'd taken 6 blaster shots for an Imperial heir. Of course I had. Ma'am, I said, because my brain defaulted to old habits whenever brass, royal, alien, whatever, stood near my hospital bed. Your Highness, Imperatrix, that's a lot of titles for someone whose kid I almost got killed. Mirren made a soft, offended noise. Serenia's eyes narrowed just slightly. My daughter was marked for death, she said. You placed yourself between her and that fate. You killed 3 of the attackers with a civilian sidearm. You took 6 high-energy impacts that should have ended you instantly. You did this with no knowledge of who she was. Didn't seem relevant, I muttered. Her frills lifted in emotion I was starting to recognize as a Kaliar version of surprise. Explain. I swallowed, throat dry. There was a child. There were people shooting at the child. I was standing there. I grimaced. That's it. You jump, or you live with not jumping. Silence stretched. Even the machines humming around my bed seemed to hold their circuits. One of the armored warriors shifted his weight. The doctor stared at me like I'd just claimed to eat vacuum for fun. Mirren's hand found mine again under the sheet. Small fingers wrapping around my wrist, careful of the IV lines. Serenia studied me. The way a tactician studies a map that has just informed her the rules of war have changed. You are very strange, she said finally. Human, I said. Comes with the package. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, but the close cousin of one, and not the public one she probably used in front of crowds. This one felt smaller, honest, dangerous in a different way. In Kaliar law, she said, such an act creates a debt that does not expire. You have saved the life of the heir to the radiant throne. That life and mine are now bound to yours. That sounded like the kind of thing that came with very fine print. Bound how exactly? I asked. He said, because I didn't do this for reward, she finished. I know. Her gaze softened in a way I didn't think was for the benefit of anyone else in the room. You did it because you could not bear to do otherwise. That is exactly why the debt is sacred. Myron tugged at her mantle. Mother, can he stay? She blurted. Here, with us? You said we owe him everything, so we should give him everything. Serenia's eyes flickered, something like grief and something like warmth passing across her features. That is not how it works, little star. Why not? Mirren insisted. He is alone. I heard them say it. No bond mate, no blood kin on station, no one to sit with him when he was hurting. Her voice cracked on the last word. The doctor looked away. The warriors shifted, uncomfortable. Serenia's attention returned to me. Is what she says true? I tried to think of a non-embarrassing way to say, yeah, your kid overheard my file. I'm a drifting loner with no one to care if I stop breathing. Wasn't exactly planning on dying, I said instead. Hard to put medbay entourage on a cargo contract. There it was again. That almost smile like a crack in old armor. You are infuriating, she murmured, and reckless. And my empire would now tear itself apart if I allowed you to limp back to your freighter with nothing but scars. She stepped closer. The warriors shifted automatically to give her space. Myron didn't move away. She pressed herself against her mother's side and watched me with the solemn intensity only kids and soldiers have. In the eyes of Kalian, Serenia said, her voice dropping into a tone that felt ceremonial, you are no longer an outsider. You are honored kin to the Radiant House. Until your life ends, this palace is your shelter. Our resources are your own. Our enemies will not touch you. My mouth opened, closed. That's... A lot of hospitality for a guy who just tripped into your assassination attempt. You didn't trip, Mirren said fiercely. You chose. Serenia nodded slightly, acknowledging the correction. You are correct, Myron. She looked back at me. Rafe Cade of Earth, you are under my personal protection. You will recover here. You will stay as long as you wish. You will not refuse this. It wasn't a request. I stared at her. Something tight and unfamiliar twisting under my ribs. No one had ordered me to be safe before. Okay, I said quietly, as guess I'm your problem now, Imperatrix. That not quite smile sharpened. I think, she said, you may be mine in more ways than that. I blamed the anesthesia for the way my heart skipped. The first week blurred into a haze of numbness and bright edges. Kalier medical tech was borderline witchcraft. Nanofibers weaving shredded tissue back together, bone knitters humming deep in my chest as they coaxed ribs into proper alignment, a slow drip of pale liquid that suppressed my body's tendency to go into shock when it realized how close it had come to being scattered atoms. Through it all, Mirren was a constant. Every morning the doors whispered open, and she padded in on silent bare feet, some new trinket clutched in her hands. The first day it was a small hollow projector that showed tiny orbiting moons when you pressed its center. The next, a clumsily carved wooden animal, some Kalier equivalent of a fox. You carved this? I asked, turning it in my fingers. The tool marks were jagged, uneven. It was stubbornly charming. She lifted her chin. I am learning woodcraft. Mother says every heir should know how to shape something that will outlive them. That's heavy, I said. She said you understand heavy things, Mirren replied, like fighting and choosing. I didn't know how to answer that, so I just held the little wooden creature and nodded. When the pain ebbed enough that I could sit up, Serenia visited. She came late after the staff had dimmed the lights, when the quiet made it easier to see past her titles. No guards flanking her, no ceremonial mantle. Just a simple dark tunic, sleeves pushed up, the living coronet on her brow dimmed to a soft blue. How's the Empire? I asked as she stepped in. Annoying, she said dryly. It insists on nearly imploding whenever I take an hour to be a mother. That sounds like a management issue. She tilted her head, considering me. My advisors would be horrified to hear you speak to me like that. Yeah, well, I said, your advisors weren't the ones who watched you trip over my IV line yesterday. The corners of her eyes crinkled. A real smile, small and bright, flashed across her face and vanished. I did not trip, she said. I misjudged the length of the tubing. Sure. She settled into the chair beside my bed. For a while we didn't say anything. The room hummed softly, the ceiling's veins pulsing in time with my heart rate. Her presence filled the silence without crowding it. I watched the plaza feeds, she said eventually, voice quiet. Do you remember any of it? Most. I shifted, wincing. Coffee argument screams, running. Then it's just light and noise and trying to be wider than a little girl. Her gaze flicked to my chest, where faint scars traced the path of the shots beneath the medgel bandage. Why didn't you take cover? She asked. It's because she couldn't, I said before my brain could deliberate. Because if I moved, they had a clear line. Because I've had to live with walking away before and I didn't want to feel that again. The moment stretched. Her frills tightened, then relaxed, as if she were restraining emotion I didn't have names for. How old were you? She asked. When what? When you walked away. I swallowed. Too young. Old enough? She nodded slowly, accepting the not answer for what it was. In my youth, she said, I believed strength was never bending, never breaking, never admitting fear. Her fingers traced idle circles on the arm of the chair. Then I had Mirren, and my bondmate died. I learned a different lesson. She looked up, meeting my eyes. Sometimes strength is choosing to break for someone else. Doesn't feel strong, I muttered. Feels stupid. Stupidity does not hold a child through 6 blaster impacts, she said. Do not dishonor yourself to comfort your doubt, Rafe Cade. I huffed out a breath that wanted to be a laugh. You always talk like that? Like what? Like you swallowed a library. Her frills fluttered. Occupational hazard. Well, I said, for what it's worth, Your Highness, your kid has better taste in metaphors. Of course she does, Serenia said. She had a better teacher than I did. Her gaze softened. She likes you. I noticed. She has not liked anyone since her father died. My throat tightened. I'm not trying to replace. I know, she interrupted gently. You could not if you wanted, but you have given her something I could not. You made her feel safe without it being a duty. She rose then, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her tunic. Rest, she said, heal. The palace will wait. The court can survive a few more days without you glowering at them from a medbed. Is that what I do? She considered me. You look at them like they are people, not positions. It is disconcerting for them, refreshing for me. She reached out, not quite touching my hand, but close enough that warmth bled across the distance. Good night, Rafe. After she left, I stared at the ceiling for a long time, listening to the quiet thrum of my rebuilt heart. It had been a long time since anyone needed me for more than carrying cargo. It had been longer since anyone like Serenia Kale looked at me like I was more than a misfired bullet that hadn't found its target yet. I took my first unsupported steps exactly 12 days after waking and nearly face-planted into a decorative fountain. Mirren thought it was the funniest thing she'd ever seen. You walk like a newborn kale stag, she giggled, hovering 3 steps away with her hands half outstretched, not sure if she was allowed to catch me. Do newborn kale stags also get shot 8 times? I grunted, gripping the rail that ran along the wall. The corridor outside the med suite curved gently, lined with embedded lights that brightened as we passed. Only if they are very clumsy, she said solemnly. The physician had cleared me for light ambulation, with a list of rules long enough to strangle someone with. No running, no lifting, no sudden movements, no stress, no being me, basically. I still say this is excessive, I muttered. Back home I'd be patched, given a stim, and shoved back onto the line. Mirren frowned. That's terrible. Yeah, I said. Yeah, it was. She slipped her hand into mine, small and sure. Then we will do it different here. There it was again. That Kaliar tendency to state something impossibly idealistic like it was inevitable. We turned a corner, and the corridor opened into a balcony that stole the rest of the air from my lungs. Kalian Prime spread out below like someone had taken starlight and coaxed it into a city. Towers of pale crystal rose in spirals and arcs veined with living light. Bridges crossed between them at dizzying heights, carrying streams of pedestrians and drifting vehicles. The sky was a shifting gradient of lavender and soft teal, the system's twin suns low enough that everything was bathed in molten color. Yeah, I breathed. Okay, your world's unfairly pretty. Mirren beamed. Mother says beauty is a duty. If we can make things lovely, we should. Your mother sounds exhausting. She is, a dry voice said behind us. I turned, careful not to wrench any freshly knitted muscle. Serenia stood in the archway, flanked by 2 guards whose armor gleamed in the twilight. She wore the mantle again, the living fabric that shifted like oil on water around her shoulders. The coronet on her brow pulsed with faint inner light. I bowed, a little. Enough not to be rude, not enough to hurt. Your radiance, I said, her frills flicked. You bowed deeper to me when you didn't know who I was. I was full of holes then, I said. My judgment was compromised. Mirren snorted. Serenia dismissed the guards with a small gesture. They retreated to a respectful distance where they could absolutely still hear every word. How does Kalian's air treat human lungs? She asked. Feels clean, I said. Too clean. Makes me suspicious. Of what? That it's about to break my heart when I have to leave. The words came out before I could filter them. I looked away, focusing on a flock of glider birds wheeling between towers. "You assumed departure," she said quietly. "I'm a hauler," I said. "We don't stay. We dock, we unload, we move on. It's the job." "And if you wanted a different one?" I blinked, turning back to her. "What exactly is your empire's job listing for idiot human who got shot a lot?" Mirren made a disapproving sound. "You are not an idiot. You are recklessly kind." "That's not necessarily a compliment, kid." "It is to me," she said. Serenya's gaze held mine. "My security council wants you gone," she said calmly. "They fear the symbol you have become, the off-worlder who bled for our heir, who lives in the palace, who walks with the crown. They say it will destabilize old alliances, invite enemies." "Sounds like smart people," I said. "They are," she agreed, "and yet I find myself disinclined to obey them." "Because of your sacred life debt thing?" I asked, her head tilted. "That is the excuse they understand." "And the real reason?" She stepped closer until the balcony light haloed her features. "Because my daughter sleeps without nightmares now," she said. "Because the first word on her lips when she wakes is your name. Because she laughs with you in a way I have not heard since before her father died." Her voice softened. "Because when you stand beside us, the palace does not feel like a fortress. It feels like a home." I swallowed hard. "You barely know me," I said. "I know enough," she replied. "I know the shape of your choices. That is a truer measure than the length of our acquaintance." Myron squeezed my hand. "Stay," she whispered, "please." The Terran in me tallied the risks. Alien politics, awkward court etiquette, the constant awareness that I was a symbol whether I wanted to be or not. The part of me that had been drifting on autopilot for years looked at a little girl's pleading eyes and an empress who spoke about home like it was something she'd lost a long time ago, and felt something crack open. "I don't know how to be whatever you think I am," I said. "Be yourself," Serenia said simply. "Let the rest arrange around that." I huffed a laugh. "That's a terrible plan," she smiled, a real one this time. "All the best ones are." I looked back out over the city, lungs full of air too clean to be trusted, body held together by alien miracles. "Home isn't a place," some old sergeant had once told me. "It's the people you'd bleed for." I'd already proven I'd bleed for one of them. "Okay," I said, the words small and somehow enormous. "I'll stay, for a while." Myron shrieked pure joy and tackled my waist. My ribs protested violently. I laughed anyway. Serenia watched us, something raw and bright in her gaze. "A while," she echoed. "We can work with that." For a while turned out to be a very elastic measurement. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into something like a life. The palace was a maze of wonders and traps for someone like me. Wonders because every corridor held something new. Walls that changed color when you ran your fingers along them. Gardens that reconfigured themselves at night so you never walked the same path twice. Kitchens that could produce a perfect approximation of Terran fried rice one day and Kalier luminescent fruit custard the next. Traps because it was painfully easy to get used to. Mirren pulled me into her orbit with the subtlety of a gravity well. She insisted I attend her lessons at least once a cycle. Sometimes that meant sitting through history lectures while she tried very hard to look serious and not giggle at my attempts to pronounce ancient Kaliar names. Other days it meant weapons practice in the courtyard, where she stubbornly refused to accept my insistence that footwork mattered more than flashy strikes. "You move like that and someone's going to sweep your legs," I said, nudging her ankle with the training staff. "Not if I break their nose first," she huffed, sweeping a clumsy strike at my side. "Spoken like a true Kale," Serenia said from the balcony above. We both looked up. She leaned on the railing, mantle traded for a simple tunic, hair caught back in a loose knot. The sight of her watching us with that small, soft smile did something to my chest I tried very hard not to analyze. "Is this a private lesson?" she called down, "or may I steal my daughter?" "You outrank me," I said. "Pretty sure you can do what you want." "Noted," she said dryly. "Mirren, we have council in an hour." Mirren groaned. "But we were working on counters." Serenya's gaze flicked to me. "Walk with us," she said. "You can complain about the council on the way. Mirren enjoys it when someone else grumbles more than she does." "You're weaponizing my bad attitude," I said. "Effectively," she replied. So I walked with them through corridors lined with historical murals, into the high glass spine of the palace where the council chamber perched like a stubborn star. I wasn't allowed in the meetings naturally. Even honored kin had limits. But Serenya took to pausing in the antechamber with me just long enough to toss me a comment about whatever crisis she was about to juggle. "Trade tariffs," she muttered one morning, rolling her eyes in a surprisingly undignified way. "The Sornus cluster thinks we should open our ports without inspection because trust builds trust." "Trust builds blind spots," I said. "Inspection builds nervous merchants. That usually means honest ones." She huffed. "You are wasted as a freighter pilot." "I'm currently a glorified house guest." "A house guest who keeps reminding me that common sense exists," she said. "Stay nearby. I may drag you in to glare at them." She never did. But knowing she thought about it warmed something in me anyway. In the evenings when the council released her and Mirren was in bed, we found new routines. Sometimes we walked the sky gardens where plants from 100 worlds grew in carefully tuned biomes. Sometimes we sat in her private observatory watching ships trace slow arcs across the darkness, talking about nothing and everything. I told her about Earth. Not the parts that made the history feeds, not wars and treaties and grand speeches. I told her about the taste of gutter shop noodles at 3 a.m. after a 10-hour shift, about the way rain smelled on hot asphalt, about kids playing ball in the shadow of orbital launch towers like it was the most normal thing in the world. She listened like these fragments were precious artifacts. In return, she told me about Kalian before her reign, the last days of her father's rule, when the Senate nearly burned the whole system down in a power grab. How she'd been thrust onto the throne younger than anyone in centuries, a crown weighing down shoulders that hadn't stopped shaking yet. "How'd you get through it?" I asked one night. She sat back, eyes reflecting the stars. "One decision at a time," she said. 1,000 small choices to be kinder than I felt capable of being, to listen longer than I wished to admit when I was afraid." "That last one sounds rough," I said. "It was," she said simply. "It still is." "You don't look afraid," she smiled faintly. "Fear is an interior weather, Rafe. The surface does not always show the storm." I looked at her then. Really looked. At the lines etched faintly around her eyes, the way her shoulders relaxed only when the doors were locked, the way her hand had never quite stopped trembling when Mirren was late coming back from the city. "Seems to me," I said slowly, "if you're scared and you keep going anyway, that's the definition of courage." Her frills fluttered. "You say that like you did not stand in a plaza and invite death to your chest." "That wasn't courage," I said. "That was reflex and bad life choices." She laughed, warm and surprised, and pressed her hand over mine where it rested on the arm of the couch. "You diminish yourself too easily," she said. "I intend to be very annoying about correcting that." Her hand stayed on mine a little longer than necessary. Neither of us commented on it. It happened on a night when the sky decided to show off. Kalian's twin moons hung low, one a pale silver disk, the other a faintly glowing amethyst. The palace's upper terraces were quiet, most of the staff dismissed, Mirren long asleep. The last of the council finally cleared out of Serenya's schedule. She had sent for me with a simple message through my wrist comm. "Come to the western balcony. Need a human opinion on something." I half expected a new trade regulation or some ceremonial outfit she was worried would make her look like a ceremonial cake, in her words. Instead, I found her standing alone at the railing, mantle discarded, the coronet dimmed to a thin band of dark metal. She wasn't wearing royalty tonight, just herself. "Hey," I said quietly, joining her. "What needs my expert insight? Because if it's interior decoration, I'm going to be useless." "It is not the decor," she said, "though your taste in art is distinct." "You mean bad?" "I mean distinct," she repeated, lips quirking. We stood together watching the moons. After a minute, she said very softly, "Do you remember the way it felt? In the plaza, when the shots hit." I blinked. That was not the conversational turn I'd expected. "Yeah," I said after a moment. "I remember." "I have watched the recordings," she said, "over and over, the way you moved, the way you refused to fall while your body was already breaking." Her hand tightened on the railing. "I have had nightmares about it, your face, the quiet after you stopped." I swallowed. I'm sorry?" "Do not be," she said. "They always end the same way, with you breathing again." Silence settled, heavy but not suffocating. "I lost my bondmate to an explosion," she said suddenly, "a targeted strike. His transport obliterated. There was nothing to hold, nothing to say goodbye to." Her voice was steady, but the frills at her temples trembled. "When I saw you fall, for a moment I was back in that day, another man, torn apart because of my bloodline." "Hey," I said, throat tight, "that wasn't—" "I know," she cut in gently, logically. "But grief rarely consults logic." She turned her head, meeting my gaze. "Then you lived. You clawed your way back out of the dark with nothing but spite and stubbornness and human biology that refuses to make sense." "I'm very proud of my spite," I said. "It's done good work. I am—" She hesitated, searching for a word. "Grateful, in ways that do not fit easily into our language." Her fingers left the railing, hovering uncertainly between us. I made the choice for her. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, I reached out and took her hand. Her skin was warm, faintly humming under my palm as the living starlight in her veins responded to the contact. Her fingers tightened. "You don't have to watch it again," I said. "The plaza feeds, the bad parts. You can't change them by replaying them." "I know," she said, "but sometimes I need to remember how close the line was so I can appreciate how far beyond it we stand now." "That's a very poetic way of saying you worry too much." "I am an empress," she said. "It is the job." "You're also a person," I replied. "That part gets to rest sometimes." She smiled. "You always speak as if that is an option." "It is," I said. "Here, now, with me." The words hung between us like a bridge we hadn't realized we were building. Slowly, Serenia stepped closer. We were almost the same height, her eyes level with mine, glowing softly in the moonlight. "I do not know how to do this," she said quietly. "I have lived half my life as a symbol. I learned to be a wife in the shadow of a throne. I have never learned to be simply a woman with a man, without an audience, without a purpose beyond the moment." "Good news," I said, my own voice going rough. "I'm terrible at everything but moments. Big plans and I don't get along." Her breath ghosted against my mouth. "Rafe." "You don't owe me anything," I said. "Not for Myron, not for the plaza, not for sticking around. If you're here because of a debt—" She squeezed my hand hard enough to make me wince. "Be quiet." Then she kissed me. It wasn't the desperate crashing together I'd half expected. It was soft, testing. The careful pressure of someone who has fought wars with steel and words and now finds herself on a battlefield made entirely of skin. Heat flared through me, sharp and clean. I closed my eyes and let years of loneliness bleed out into the contact. When she pulled back, her frills were lit up like small suns. "Is this acceptable?" she asked, voice barely more than breath. "For humans?" That was... I cleared my throat. "That was extremely acceptable, yes." Relief and something like shy delight flickered across her face. "Good," she said. I would hate to have offended you by initiating interspecies diplomatic contact incorrectly. I laughed, the sound shaky, and leaned my forehead against hers. Serenia, I said. Just her name. Not her title, not her role. The woman. Her free hand came up to rest over the scar under my ribs, fingers splaying as if she could feel the ghost of each bolt. You took fire meant for my daughter, she whispered. I find myself wanting to spend the rest of my very long life making sure you never face that alone again. That's a terrible bargain for you, I said. Human lives are short. We burn out fast. Stars burn out, she said. We still make wishes on them. There, on a balcony above a city of crystal and light, with the universe humming quietly around us, an alien empress and a human drifter made a choice, not bound by law, not carved in ceremony, just chosen. The palace noticed before the court did. Servants are better at reading atmospheres than politicians ever will be. They were the first to see the way Serenia's shoulders loosened when I entered a room, the way my scowl softened when she laughed, the way Mirren went from clinging to her mother's mantle to grabbing both our hands and tugging us down corridors like a miniature comet. They didn't gossip. They didn't need to. The walls themselves seemed to brighten. The court, on the other hand, lived to gossip. It started with glances during formal dinners. The Imperatrix leaning a little closer to the human at her right hand than protocol strictly required. The human daring to meet her gaze and smirk when a senator said something particularly idiotic. Questions began to whisper along the arcades. Is it an alliance tactic? Is he a political pawn? Is he some sort of Terran spy? Let them talk, Serenia said mildly when I mentioned it. They have gossiped about less interesting things for years. I don't want to make your life harder, I said. You've already got enough pressure without rumors about you and the idiot who won't duck. You keep calling yourself that, she said, as if it will make the galaxy forget what you did. I don't want the galaxy to remember, I muttered. I just want you two to be alive. She reached across the small table in her private dining room and covered my hand with hers. We are, she said, because of you. You will not erase that to soothe your discomfort. Mirren chose that moment to burst in, hair wild, tunic askew. Mother Rafe, she yelled, skidding to a halt. You promised you'd watch the glider race with me. Serenia arched an eyebrow. I did. Did I not also say you should knock before entering private? Important, Mirren said, waving a dismissive hand. They started early. Come on. She grabbed my other hand without waiting, hauling me out of my chair. Serenia laughed, actually laughed, out loud, like a teenager, and let herself be dragged too. Later, as we stood on a balcony watching sleek, winged craft weave between towers, Mirren perched precariously on the railing between us, I realized something. The court didn't matter. The whispers didn't matter. This effortless, ridiculous patchwork thing the three of us were building, this was the only politics I cared about. The Empire figured it out formally 3 months later. Serenia called a convocation in the Hall of Confluence, the kind of gathering reserved for declarations that would echo for generations. Senators in elaborate robes, planetary governors, military leaders, all standing in a vast amphitheater of living stone that resonated with the sound of 1,000 heartbeats. I stood on a balcony level above, beside Myron, who vibrated with barely contained excitement. You know what she's going to say? I asked. Yes, Myron said smugly. I am not allowed to tell you. Traitor. She grinned, unrepentant. The hall dimmed. A shaft of light speared down onto the center dais. Serenia stepped into it, mantle flowing, coronet blazing bright as a small star. My people, she said, and her voice rolled through the chamber with the effortless authority of someone born to rule and hardened by using that power in ways that didn't destroy her. We gather to honor a bond that began in blood and now chooses to stand in light. She told the story, not the sanitized version, the real one. A human drifter in a silk and crystal plaza, Assassins in borrowed uniforms, blaster fire and stubborn flesh, and a child whose life hung on the thread of one stranger's choice. She did not glamorize it. She didn't need to. The feed hollows projected around the chamber did that for her. I watched myself fall again, this time from a safe distance, and still felt my ribs ache. And so, Serenia said, gaze sweeping the hall, we acknowledge what already is. Rafe Cade of Earth, come forward. Myron elbowed me hard. Go. I hate this, I muttered, but my feet moved anyway. Down the winding stair, across a bridge of light that formed under me as I walked, out into the open center of the hall, thousands of Kaliar eyes watched. Serenia's gaze met mine, and the noise faded. This man, she said, saved not only my daughter's life, he saved my heart from closing. He reminded this empire that courage can come from anywhere, that honor is not a bloodline, that family is chosen as much as inherited. She stepped closer, her voice lowering. In the presence of the confluence, I claim him as bondmate. The hall exploded. Sound slammed into me like another volley of blaster fire, the Kaliar ululation of celebration, the hum of the stone amplifying their joy. Shouted phrases I didn't catch over the roar. Serenia reached up and touched my cheek, her fingers steady despite the storm around us. This is not a political move, she said quietly, translator humming in my ear. If it costs me allies, so be it. I have made my choice as a woman, not as an empress. Do you stand with me? It should have felt terrifying. It did, a little. Mostly, it felt inevitable. I've been standing with you since the plaza, I said. Took me a while to catch up to what that meant. Her smile lit the hall more than the coronet ever could. She pressed her forehead to mine. The coronet flared, projecting a shimmering network of light that settled over both of us, then extended to the balcony where Myron watched, eyes bright with tears. In that moment, the Empire saw exactly what we were, a human and an empress, a child between worlds, a family. The legend would grow wild from there. Songs, murals, dramatic misinterpretations of how many bolts I actually took. But under all of that, something simple hummed. We chose each other. The rest of the galaxy could deal. The celebration after the Confluence Declaration lasted 3 full cycles. Kaliar knew how to party when they decided something mattered. The city became a sea of light, banners of living crystal unfurling between towers, street vendors giving away food until their stalls were empty, impromptu choirs forming in plazas to sing about the human who wouldn't fall and the empress who chose a heart from the stars. It was obscene and overwhelming and weirdly beautiful. The political hangover came right on schedule. We've received 12 formal protests, Serenia said 4 days later, pinching the bridge of her nose. 3 from border governors, 6 from outer sea clans, and 3 from senators who swear their outrage is purely constitutional and not at all rooted in species prejudice. We were in her private study, a circular room paneled in dark wood and lit by a ring of hovering light orbs. I lounged on the couch with my boots off. Mirren sprawled beside me, head on my thigh, pretending to read a data slate and absolutely eavesdropping. What's the complaint? I asked. That you bonded outside the species? Or that you didn't ask their permission first? Yes, Serenia said. I snorted. She flicked a protest file onto the hollow in the air between us. A senator's face appeared, severe, rigid, eyes cold. This union, while emotionally understandable, introduces instability into the perception of the radiant throne, he was saying. How are we to reassure our allies that Kalian remains committed to its own identity when its Imperatrix chooses a mate from a species known primarily for volatility and war? Wow, I said. Nice to see stereotypes survive the jump between galaxies. Mirren sniffed. He looks like a boiled root. Language, Serenia said mildly. She's not wrong, I muttered. Serenia killed the hollow with a twitch of her fingers. I expected this, she said. Some of them fear contamination. Others fear that if I can make decisions based on my own happiness, I might start disregarding their power games. And are they wrong? I asked, a small, sharp smile. No. What do you want me to do? I said, because I'm guessing punch them isn't the correct answer in this context. It is rarely the first correct answer, Serenia said. Just your role is simpler. Keep being yourself. That's your plan? It is, she said, alarmingly effective. She wasn't entirely wrong. It turned out that actually seeing the terrifying, destabilizing human in person, usually with Myron climbing him like a tree and the Imperatrix laughing at some muttered joke, did more to calm the populace than any speech. The palace opened certain events to live feeds, festivals, ceremonies, casual appearances. I became part of the background, the human at the empress's side, sometimes in formal black, sometimes in worn cargo pants, always watching, listening. Sometimes the court forgot the feeds were on. And what if he snaps? A governor hissed at a reception, not realizing his words carried to half the system. Humans are unstable. He could turn on her. That was the exact moment Serenia walked up behind him. If that happened, she said pleasantly, I would be dead before any of you could blink, and Rafe would die trying to undo it. Neither of those outcomes appeal to me, Governor Triss, so perhaps trust the one who has taken more blaster fire for this family than anyone here. The governor paled an interesting shade of pale lilac. Your radiance, I simply meant... You meant you are frightened, she said, which is understandable. Do not cloak it in insults. It makes you look smaller, not safer. The feed caught my expression, a mix of exasperation and reluctant awe. The clip went viral system-wide in less than an hour. The protest didn't vanish, but they changed tone, from panicked outrage to grudging curiosity. Humans, one talk channel commentator said, appear to be weaponized loyalty in a primate shell. I wasn't sure whether to be offended or proud. Proud, Mirren decided when I mentioned it over breakfast. They finally noticed. The test came 6 months later. Kalian's Festival of Radiance was older than most of its recorded history, once a cycle, when the suns aligned just so and their light refracted through the planetary rings in a specific pattern. The capital turned off half its artificial illumination and let the sky do the work. Serenia insisted I see it from the ground this time. You watched from the balcony last year, she said. That is a ruler's vantage point. You should see it as the people do. Are you sure security is happy with that? I asked. Yet me and you and Myron all in the open. They are not, she said, that they will cope. Myron sided with her. Of course. So we walked through the city streets that evening, flanked by a discreet ring of plainclothes guards who were utterly failing to be inconspicuous. The crowd parted and closed around us like a living tide, people bowing, reaching out to touch the hem of Serenia's mantle, small children staring at me with open wonder. Is that him? One whispered, tugging her parent's sleeve. The human? Yes, the parent murmured, don't stare. I'm not staring, the child said. I'm memorizing. Mirren heard and grinned. Careful, she said. He only looks impressive until he tries to cook. Hey, I protested. My noodles are amazing. Your noodles are a war crime, she said. Serenia laughed, the sound quick and bright. We reached the central plaza just as the suns dipped to the right angles. The city dimmed, tall towers powering down their external lights. For a moment everything held its breath. Then the sky ignited. The rings caught the sunlight and shattered it, cascading bands of color across the heavens. Blues and golds and deep burning reds swept over each other like tides. The crystal spires drank in the light and re-emitted it, turning the whole city into a prism. The crowd gasped as one organism. Okay, I said softly, that's something. Worth staying for? Serenia asked. I didn't look away from the sky. Yeah, I said. Yeah, it is. Which is, of course, when someone tried to kill us. Old stories say fate has a sense of humor. They're not wrong. The first sign was a ripple in the crowd's sound. Laughter broke around a silent knot of bodies that were trying too hard not to be noticed. My soldier brain flagged it even as my eyes were dazzled by light. Then I saw the glint. Not from the sky, from a tower edge, a targeting lens catching a stray shard of ring glow. Down, I heard myself say, already moving. Mirren knew that tone by now. She dropped into a crouch without argument. Serenia followed an instant later, mantle flaring as she shielded her daughter. 2 shots cracked the air a heartbeat after. They weren't blasters. The sound was wrong, solid projectiles, not energy. Someone had decided to be clever and sidestep our energy shields entirely. The first slug whined over where Serenia's head had been. The second hit the shield bubble that snapped up around us as the guards finally registered the threat. "Up!" one of them yelled. "Move! Move!" Explosions thumped from 3 different directions. Smoke grenades, popping in thick billows of metallic shimmer. Visibility went to hell. People screamed. The crowd surged outward, trying to flee. I grabbed Mirren with one hand, Serenia with the other, and hauled them toward the nearest cover. An ornamental pillar thick enough to hide us from at least one angle. "Rafe," Serenia started. "Don't argue," I snapped. "You remember last time you didn't duck?" Her mouth compressed into a thin line. She ducked. Guards formed a ring around us, weapons out. They fired into the smoke, precise bursts meant to deter, not kill blindly. The attackers had planned for that. They came not from the crowd, but from above. Descending on jump lines from the low balconies, silhouettes hard and fast. One of them hit the pavement in front of us, rolling smoothly to his feet. His armor was matte black, faceplate opaque, rifle already coming up. I moved. He expected royal guards. Kaylee are trained in elegant, efficient forms that prioritize maintaining formation. He got a human brawler who'd learned to fight in ship corridors and alleyways. I slammed into him before he could stabilize, driving my shoulder into his chest. Pain lanced through still healing scar tissue. I ignored it. Momentum carried us both sideways. His rifle spat, bolt slicing a guard's arm instead of Serenia's heart. We hit the ground. He tried to roll, bring the rifle around. I grabbed the barrel and wrenched. It burned my palm. I kept pulling until something in his shoulder gave with a sick crack. He screamed. I didn't let go. "Rafe!" Myron shouted. "Stay behind the pillar!" I barked. More shots, shouts. The high whine of Kaylee, our energy blades cutting through stone. Someone grabbed me from behind, a chokehold locking around my throat. I slammed my head backwards into their visor, felt it crack, drove my heel into their knee. They went down with me. Humans are not stronger than most species pound for pound. We're just really, really rude about pain. By the time the smoke began to thin, 3 attackers were down around us, 1 unconscious, 2 dead. A 4th lay pinned to the plaza stone by a guard's spear, howling as the energy field burned through his armor into the ground instead of his flesh. The others fled, jump lines retracting, silhouettes vanishing into the riot of light. "Status!" Serenia barked, emerging from behind the pillar, eyes blazing. In that moment, she was not my bondmate. She was the Imperatrix, weaponized. "No hits on primary targets," no, the guard captain snapped. 2 wounded civilians, 1 downed guard, 4 hostiles neutralized, unknown number escaped. Serenia turned to me. Blood ran down my left forearm where the rifle barrel had scorched skin. A bruise was already blooming on my throat. I wiped sweat from my brow, breathing hard. "You okay?" I asked her. Her frills fluttered violently. "You are bleeding." I asked first. She stepped in and grabbed my face between her hands, scanning me with a depth that had nothing to do with medtech. "You are intact," she said finally, voice low. "Told you," I said. "I'm hard to get rid of." Mirren launched herself at me, nearly knocking me over. "Oh, you moved again," she said into my chest. "You always move." "Yeah, kid," I murmured, wrapping an arm around her. "That's kind of my thing." The investigation that followed dug up exactly what you'd expect. A splinter faction convinced that Kalian's identity was being diluted by the Empress's bond with a human, that Mirren's mixed household would weaken the bloodline. We watched the recordings in the security hub. Serenya's jaw clenched so tight I could hear her teeth creak. "They were aiming for you," I said quietly, "both of you." "Yes," she said. "Good," I said. Her head snapped toward me. "Good?" "Because that means they still don't understand," I said. "They think killing you breaks this. They think I'm an accessory. They have no idea that if they took you away, I'd spend every second of whatever life I had left tearing them limb from limb." Her eyes widened slightly. "Humans are difficult to intimidate," I said. "We grieve loud." "Grief is not a weapon," she said. "Depends how you swing it," I replied. The guard captain cleared his throat in a way that suggested he deeply wished to be anywhere else. Serenya looked from the recordings to me, something like terrible fondness flickering across her face. "You terrify me," she said. "Join the club," I said. Then she turned back to the screen, voice going flat and cold. "Find them all," she told the captain. "Every funder, every sympathizer, every shadow they hid in. We will not answer hate with slaughter, but we will answer it." In the months that followed, the Empire watched as Serenya publicly dismantled the faction, not by purging whole clans, but by cutting their influence, exposing their rhetoric, and offering their followers something better to believe in. She spoke of the plaza, of the festival attempt, of the human who kept stepping between death and her child. "He is not a threat to our identity," she said in one address broadcast to the system. "He is proof of what that identity truly is. We are a people who recognize courage wherever it comes from. We are a people who answer loyalty with loyalty." I stood beside her, Mirren on my other side, and let the weight of their attention wash over me. HFY isn't just humans being awesome. It's everybody else realizing we're not just chaos apes. We're chaos apes who love like a problem you can't solve. Kalian was starting to get the message. Life settled into a new normal. Not calm. Nothing about a royal household is calm but stable. Serenya made it official. I was no longer just honored kin. I was the crown's human envoy, liaison to Terran spheres, consultant on matters of cross-cultural understanding, which mostly meant I got to sit in on meetings and say things like, "If you phrase that offer like that, every human in the room will assume it's a trap." "You think everything is a trap," one Kalier minister grumbled. "You live long enough in our part of space," I said. "You're statistically more likely to be right." Mirren grew. She shot up like someone had slipped growth serum into her breakfast. One cycle I could still lift her one-handed. The next she was nearly at my shoulder, limbs all awkward grace and simmering power. She trained with the palace guard every dawn now, sweat darkening her tunic, star traces along her arms blazing bright with exertion. I sparred with her when my joints allowed it. "You're telegraphing," I said one morning, catching her staff strike with my forearm. "Your eyes go where you're about to hit." She scowled. "I am not." She feinted left, swung right. I didn't bother blocking the feint, stepped inside the real swing and tapped her ribs. "Still are." "Unfair," she panted. "You're reading my mind." "That's your mother's trick," I said. "I just read bodies. Show less, they hit less." She blew hair out of her face. "You're getting slow, you know." "My back would agree," I said. "Unfortunately, my pride doesn't listen to my back." She grinned. "You're still faster than half the guard." "That's because half the guard is polite," I said. "I'm not." She laughed. After training, we'd sit on the edge of the practice platform, legs dangling over the drop, watching the city wake. Street vendors setting up stalls, transports gliding along invisible lanes, the constant dance of a world that had finally stopped looking like a postcard and started feeling like a neighborhood. "You ever think about going back?" Mirren asked one morning out of nowhere. "Back where?" I said, tossing her a water flask. "Earth," she said. "You've told me so many stories, but you never go." I took a long drink before answering. Sometimes, I said honestly, I think about the oceans, the smell of rain, faces I haven't seen in years. I smiled crookedly. Then I think about how long it would take to travel, and how many days I'd be away from you two, and it stops sounding worth it. She watched me with that piercing, kale stare she'd inherited straight from her mother. You know you're allowed to miss it, she said, even if you stay here. I do miss it, I said. It's just not home anymore. What is? She asked. I bumped her shoulder with mine. You're sitting in it. Her face did this complicated thing. Pride and softness and a flicker of something like guilt. I don't want you to stay if it hurts, she said. It hurts more thinking about leaving, I replied. Later I mentioned the conversation to Serenia as we walked the gardens. She worries, Serenia said. She knows your life is shorter than ours. She fears you will one day look at the years you gave us and regret not spending them under an earth sky. You? I asked. She considered. Fear is not the right word. I am aware of the possibility. It does not change my choice. I would rather have half a lifetime with you than a whole one without. That's a horrifyingly romantic thing to say, I muttered. It is also mathematically accurate, she said. Of course you had to ruin it with math. She slid her hand into mine. You love me for my flaws. Unfortunately, I said, and squeezed her fingers. HFY stories like to pretend humans are the passionate, impulsive ones and aliens are all logic and calm. Reality is messier. Kaliar felt just as intensely. They were just better at hiding it until they trusted you. I'd become addicted to being trusted. Time did what it always does. It moved. I noticed it in my hands first. One morning, I was helping Myron adjust the grip on a ceremonial spear. My fingers slid over hers, guiding the angle. Her skin was warm and taut with youth. Mine was not. There were lines now, tendons standing out sharper, a faint tremor that had nothing to do with adrenaline. You're frowning, she said. Just realizing my warranty's almost up, I said. She didn't laugh. Don't. Don't what? Don't make jokes like that, she said too quickly. Not about you stopping. We stood there for a beat. Spear caught between us. Myron, I said carefully, you've known this was coming since you were old enough to count, yeah? Knowing and feeling are different things, yeah? She said, echoing her mother so precisely it hurt. I set the spear aside and turned to face her fully. Kaliar aged differently. Serenia looked exactly the same as when we met. Aside from a few more worry lines around her mouth you'd miss if you didn't know her. Mirren, though. Mirren was solid adult now. Taller than me by a few centimeters, shoulders squared by training and expectation. You're going to live a very long time, I said. Longer than I can wrap my head around. You're going to see stars be born and die, empires rise, fall, rise again. You're going to carry this world on your back and somehow not let it break you. You think any of that would be easier if I hung around forever? Yes, she said flatly. I snorted. Wrong? You just invent new ways to worry about me doing something stupid. She glared. I gentled my voice. Look, short lives aren't a bug, they're a feature. Humans get what, 80 good years if we're lucky, 90 with medtech and stubbornness? That means we can't afford to coast. We get up, we love hard, we make our messes, we fix what we can, and we try not to leave too much broken behind us. That's a terrible system, she said. Yeah, I said, yeah, it kind of is. But it makes everything sharp, vivid. Meeting you and your mother, knowing I didn't have centuries, that's what made me move in that plaza. I didn't have time to hesitate. Her throat worked. I don't want to watch you fall again, she whispered, not the slow way. That's not how it'll happen, I said. I'm going to fall asleep on a couch somewhere and start snoring louder than usual. Your mother will throw a pillow at me. I will fail to respond. That's it. That's not funny, she said, voice cracking. It will be, I said. In retrospect, the best stories always hurt while they're happening. She leaned into me then, all those inches of royal air folding down to press her forehead to my shoulder like she'd done when she was tiny. "I hate your species," she muttered. "Liar," I said, wrapping my arms around her. "You love at least one of us." She made a miserable noise. "I love two of you. You're both infuriating." "That's our job," I said softly. "To be infuriating enough that you keep feeling, even when it hurts." Later that night, Serenia and I sat in the garden, the same bench we'd worn grooves into over the years. "She is not handling it well," Serenia said. "Good," I said. "Means I did my job right." "You call making our daughter miserable a job well done?" "She's not miserable," I said. "She's alive, feeling the full weight of the clock. That's going to make her a better ruler. She'll understand what it means when someone with less time gives some of it to her." Serenia was quiet for a long time. "I used to envy human brevity," she said finally. "The way your histories are crowded with change, the way your lives burn bright and fierce, and then you are gone, leaving stories smoking behind you." "And now?" I asked. "Now," she said, "I hate it, and I still envy it. I am very tired of truths that can be both." "You're the one who fell for a soft-tissue ape with bad knees," I said. "I fell for a man who took 6 shots and wouldn't fall," she corrected. "The knees were a later revelation." I laughed, then winced. My ribs chose that moment to remind me they'd been rebuilt too many times. She heard the tiny intake of breath and stiffened. "How bad?" she asked. "Nothing new," I lied. She turned, eyes narrow. "I know your micro-tremors, Rafe. Do not insult me with gentle truths. The thing about being loved by someone whose entire culture is built on reading subtle cues, you can't bullshit them. Not for long." "Fine," I said, "and the scaffolding's creaking. That plaza did more damage than we thought, and the years layered their own on top. The docs say I've got plenty of time, just less than either of you." "How much less?" "Enough that you'll get sick of me complaining before I go anywhere," I said. "And no, I won't give you an exact number. That's not a countdown I need any of us staring at." She closed her eyes, breath shuddering in and out. "I thought," she said quietly, "that watching your hair silver would be charming. That your skin wrinkling would be endearing. I did not anticipate wanting to tear years off my own life and hand them to you." "That's not how it works," I said. "If it did, humans would have broken the universe already." She opened her eyes. They were very bright. "If there were a way," she said, "I would take it." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm glad there isn't. You'd do it without blinking, and then I'd have to be angry at you for giving up pieces of yourself. This way, we all get what we get." "And what is that?" she asked. I looked at her. At the garden she'd tended, at the palace that had become more house than palace, at the world that had stopped being someone else's and started feeling like mine. "A life worth the price," I said. "The day they crowned Myron co-ruler, the sky cooperated. Kalier weather control could have forced it anyway, but they didn't need to. The air was clear, the light sharp, the rings flaring just enough to make the towers shimmer without blinding anyone. I stood with Serenia on a balcony overlooking the Hall of Confluence. Below us, thousands of Kaliar filled the tiers, their bodies humming with excitement. "Do you remember her first steps?" she asked. "She tried to run and fell on her face," I said. "Then got up and tried again before anyone could pick her up." Serenia smiled. "Of course you would remember that detail." "That's the important part," I said. "The falling's just set up." Inside, Mirren waited, dressed in ceremonial white shot through with threads of deep blue. The coronet she'd wear today was a twin to Serenia's, slightly smaller but no less heavy with meaning. She caught my eye as we stepped in. "How's my posture?" she whispered. "Terrible," I said. She rolled her eyes. "Liar." "You look like someone who's about to terrify every idiot in this room," I said, in a good way. "That's better," she said, and her smile flashed. Quick, genuine, gone. Serenia took her place at the center of the dais. I moved to my customary spot just behind and to the right, not quite on display, not quite hidden. The ceremony began. Words older than any of us filled the hall, vows of stewardship, oaths to protect the weak and uphold the balance of light and shadow. Myron repeated them steady-voiced, hands never trembling. When the moment came, Serenia turned to her daughter, coronet cradled in both hands. "Do you accept this burden?" she asked. "Yes," Myron said. "Do you accept that love and duty will tear at each other, and that your task is not to choose between them, but to weave them together?" "Yes," Myron said louder. "Do you accept that all lives given to you, long or short, are not possessions but gifts?" Her gaze flicked to me. For a heartbeat, the hall narrowed to a tunnel between us. "Yes," she said softly. Serenia set the coronet on Myron's brow. The hall erupted in sound. Later, when the formalities were done and the court had scattered to various receptions, we slipped away. The three of us ended up predictably in the garden. "I thought becoming co-ruler would feel different," Myron said, kicking at a pebble on the path. "Give it time," I said. "The crushing weight of expectation takes at least 24 hours to really settle in." She snorted. Serenia looped her arm through mine. "You are handling the crushing weight well so far." "That's because I put most of it on you," I said. She leaned her head briefly on my shoulder. She'd gotten more openly tactile over the years, at least in private. Power had carved away some of her caution. Love had carved away the rest. "You look tired," Myron said suddenly. "Thank," I said. "Great thing to say to your aging human." She frowned. "I meant more than usual," I grunted. "Yeah, well, ceremonies are boring. Boredom is exhausting." That earned me twin glares. "Fine," I said. "Docs have been fiddling with my meds, trying to keep the wiring from fraying all at once. It'll pass." "Rafe," Serenia said, voice warning. "I'm not collapsing at your coronation," I told Myron. "That would be dramatic and very on-brand, but I'm resisting the urge." "That's not funny," Myron said again. "Sure it is," I said, "and think of the legends. On the day our new empress rose, the human fell, symbolic of—" Myron threw a flower at me. It bounced off my chest and spun away in a shower of light. "Stop," she said, voice cracking. "Right. Enough joking for one day." I stepped closer, put a hand on her shoulder. She'd grown into herself so fully it took my breath away. The scared kid in the plaza was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd seen the worst of her world and chosen to make it better anyway. "You're going to be fine," I said, "with or without me watching over your shoulder." "I don't want without," she said. "You don't get to choose," I said gently. "None of us do. We just decide what to do with the time we get." "Poetic," Serenia murmured. "Stole it from somewhere," I said. Can't remember where." They both rolled their eyes at the same time. It was deeply unfair, being outnumbered by royalty with good timing. We sat on the bench. Myron on my left, Serenia on my right. The sun slid lower, painting the garden in molten color. "Tell it again," Myron said, after a long stretch of quiet. "Tell what?" I asked, though I already knew. "The plaza," she said, "from your side, not the feeds, your version." "You know this story," I said. "I want to hear it while you can still tell it," she replied, blunt as a hammer. Serenia inhaled sharply. "Fair enough." I closed my eyes, pulled the memory up. "Okay," I said. "It was a terrible coffee stall?" I told it, the scream, the run, the shots, the weight of a too small body under my arms. The moment I realized I couldn't feel my legs and decided not to care, they listened like they hadn't heard it 100 times. When I finished, Myron's eyes were bright. "I remember the smell," she said, "one burned stone and fear, and you, like metal and sweat and blood." "Romantic," I said. "It is," she said. Serenia's hand tightened on mine. "Rafe," she said quietly, "if you had known then where that choice would lead, here, now, this, would you still have made it?" I smiled. That's the wrong way around, I said. I made the choice. Because I made it, all of this happened. Trying to imagine it the other way is like asking if I'd still jump if falling up was an option. I hate your metaphors, she said. You love my metaphors, I corrected. She didn't argue. We sat there as the sun set on a world that had become ours in all the ways that mattered. Time would do what it wanted. Bodies would fail. Empires would rise and fall and rise again. But this? A moment with my family in a garden on an alien world, knowing I'd earned it with blood and stubbornness and one good decision? That was enough. The historians would argue about the details. Some would say the Plaza incident marked the turning point in Caeliar-Terran relations. Others would point to the attempted assassination at the Festival of Radiance, or the Confluence Declaration, or Mirren's co-coronation as the true hinge. They'd write papers and host debates and project simulations of alternate timelines. They'd miss the point. The real pivot wasn't in a hall or a plaza, it was in quieter places. A human teaching an alien princess how to swing a staff without tripping. An empress sneaking out of council early to sit on a garden bench and listen to bad Earth jokes. A child of two worlds standing on a balcony, watching her parents argue about whether noodles should glow, and realizing she didn't have to choose one side of herself over the other. That's how empires shift. Not with explosions, with accumulating stubborn acts of love. Years after I was gone, in the simple, human way I'd promised, asleep and stubbornly refusing to wake, Caelian Prime still told the story. They told it in songs, usually with twice as many blaster bolts and 3 extra attackers. They told it in plays, actors in human makeup overacting my part so badly Serenia would pinch the bridge of her nose and mutter about artistic license. They told it in children's hollow books, simplified into the man who stood still when everything else ran away. Earth told it too eventually. The feeds picked it up, half disbelieving, and turned it into one more legend in a pantheon of humans doing dumb, brave things far from home. In the palace garden, beneath silver trees that glowed a little brighter whenever Mirren walked past, there was a bench. Sometimes when the stress of ruling 200 worlds threatened to crush her, she'd slip away and sit there. She'd close her eyes and listen for echoes, her mother's low laugh, my rough voice complaining about my knees, her own childhood squeal as she tried to climb over both of us at once. The echoes weren't real, but the warmth was. On anniversaries, Serenia, older now only in the set of her shoulders because her face refused to give time the satisfaction, would join her. You still talk to him? Mirren would ask. Yes, Serenia would say. He is just as irritating as ever. Is he winning any arguments? Never, Serenia would say, but he keeps making them. Mirren would smile. She ruled with the same stubborn compassion that had driven a human stranger to step between her and a storm of fire. She opened Caelian's gates to more than trade, inviting in refugees, artists, wanderers, the broken and the hopeful, regardless of species. When someone in council protested, "We cannot help everyone," she would say, "No, but we can help these people today. That is enough." When they muttered about risk, she'd say, "My life began when someone took a risk. Do not demand cowardice from me now." It was never perfect. Nothing is. There were wars and losses and mistakes that hurt worlds, but the baseline had shifted. When humans arrived at Caeliar ports, they weren't just tolerated. They were greeted with a term that had slipped into the language, Kaid Shar, sure, those who stand in the fire. The galaxy is big. It will forget almost everything eventually. Stars die, records decay, cultures vanish into silence. But for a very long time in one corner of that endless dark, they remembered a simple, stupid, brilliant thing. A man saw a child about to die, decided that his fear, his pain, his history didn't matter as much as her next breath. He moved. He fell. He got up again. From that choice, an empire changed. From that choice, a lonely drifter found a family, an empress found peace, and a princess grew into a ruler who understood exactly what every life given to her was worth. That's the core of the HFY niche. If you strip away the fireworks and giant warships and melodramatic speeches, we're not special because we're strong or smart or destined. We're special because when the universe throws chaos into a plaza, there's always some idiot with a bad knee and a good heart who says, "Not today," and steps in front of it. And that's enough to bend history. The end. Liked this story? Hit subscribe and stick around for the next tale of humanity crashing headfirst into the wider galaxy and changing everything, one reckless, hopeful choice at a time.